One thing I've noticed in the last couple of weeks that I think is very interesting are the number of educated and smart friends that I have who send me a text or a call or an email and say, "Hey, can you explain what a tariff is? I see this word, but I don't really know what it is." And I think that's important because I don't think the average person understands what can happen to the economy if this persists for a long period of time.
I'm so glad you said that because I've been waiting for weeks now to ask somebody like yourself who studied economics to explain in a simple way what a tariff is. And feel free to use an analogy. I think about 50% of people have no idea what a tariff is.
Yeah.
And then on a sort of an incremental scale, people's clarity gets better and better. I would estimate about 5% of the general population could articulate what a tariff is, 5% or less. So can you tell me what a tariff is?
The first I would say is tariffs have been used for hundreds of years. And there can be a very good, useful purpose for them in the economy. I think as they're structured right now in the United States, it's a huge mistake. It has a potential to be a catastrophe. But they can be a useful thing in the economy. This is not a black and white thing. What a tariff keep this very simple. The United States buys a bunch of computers that are made in China, a bunch of iPhones that are made in China. They're on a container ship. They ship them to the United States. When they get to the port in the United States, the importer, which is Apple, bringing the iPhones in that are made in China,
An American company.
has to pay the tariff
Oh,
that's put on it. And a lot of people, and it's very understandable why they would think this, would say, well, no, in that situation, China pays the tariff. And there could be a situation where China starts discounting the iPhones. The company that's making the iPhones would discount it. Like there can be some offset. But the person who's paying that tax is the importer.
So often we think about, we've applied the tariff to China.
Right.
So what's happening is China having to spend the 10%, or I think the tariff currently is like 125,
145.
145%.
The number doesn't matter because trade will just stop at those levels. It just won't happen.
So if Apple import an iPhone now with that tariff level, then Apple would have to pay the 145% when
Yes.
it arrives at the shore
Correct.
of the United
I mean,
States.
here's an example that most people will understand. Sales tax. You know, in most states in the United States, it's 6 to 10%. If you go to the store and buy something, you add the sales tax to that.
VAT in the UK.
Yeah, fair. Who pays that is not the store, it's the customer. So even if the tax is put on the seller passes it on to you, the customer, and it says right on your receipt, you bought something for $10, and then there's your sales tax, and here's what you're going to pay in the end. And so it's similar from that. Now, let me explain this, why there would be a very useful case for tariffs to show that this is not black and white, and this is not, oh, all tariffs are bad. This happened in the United States during COVID. We were virtually 100% reliant on masks, N95 masks that were made in China and Korea and not in the United States. And so when you have a medical crisis in the early days of COVID, and we're like, we need hundreds of millions of masks yesterday, they're all made somewhere else. We do not want to be in that situation. So it would absolutely make sense to have a tariff on masks to make sure that they are so expensive to import overseas that we have to start making them in the United States. That makes sense. Same with military equipment. You do not want to go to war with a country and be reliant on that country to make your military gear, your bullets and your bombs and your tanks and whatnot. Absolutely makes sense to have a tariff on that to make sure they're made in the United States. That said, so it's not black and white, but to have a blanket tariff and say, everything that comes from any country, anywhere in the world, and China's going to be this to an extreme degree, is going to have a tariff on it. And whether that's between 10% for all countries or 145% from China, I've used this analogy before that if you talk to dietitians, there is a huge amount of debate over what's the best diet should you eat. Should you be keto? Should you be vegan? Like everything in between. There's so much debate. All of them agree that processed sugar is bad. Nobody thinks processed sugar is good. And tariffs are that with economists. Like there is so much debate among economists on what should the tax rate be? What should subsidies be? Should we, like free market versus subsidies? There's so much debate. No serious economist thinks that you should have a trade war. And the thing is, this is not new. We've been doing this for hundreds of years. And it's very well known that in the 1930s, the Great Depression, we put huge tariffs on in the early days of the Great Depression. They didn't know it was called the Great Depression back then because we put them on and it shut down global trade. And it's easy to think that if you put tariffs on your own country, that will make it easier to manufacture. Like all those jobs that we shipped overseas of building cars, they're all going to come rushing back to America. And it very rarely happens like that when you have a trade war. But what I mean by trade war is we put tariffs on China, they respond to put tariffs on us, and you just go tit for tat, and you go back and forth, and it's like mutually assured destruction in economic terms.
So why is that?